Brian, thanks for joining us, Knowledge 2025. We wanted to talk a little bit about digital transformation and physical security, but before we get to the future, let's talk a little bit about the past. Why has it taken so long for us to get here?
I think it's our industry in general. The physical security industry is really slow to move from a transformation perspective, glacially slow. And part of it is just because physical safety and security deals with a lot of human aspects and physical aspects that require a lot of deep thought, and maybe people that are running these programs are reluctant to change, and so they just keep doing the same thing over and over with a bunch of point solutions with a lot of wasted time and money. And I think the transformation is needed to where we need to get to, and that's why I'm excited talking to you.
Yeah, I think Barry's going to make a difference there. One of the things, though, is we can talk about the industry itself, but you obviously were at a progressive organization. You had some tools, but what were some of the technological problems that you ran into when you tried to do this previously?
Well, part of it is just really integrating platforms and solutions. Like I said, they're point solutions. They're just one thing that does a solution or service, but it doesn't integrate with others. And what we're looking for is like a single platform, single view, single pane of glass, so we can just get our jobs done. And until now, it does not exist.
Yeah, let's talk about the single pane of glass a little bit. Sometimes when people think single pane of glass, they think of a map. But as a chief security officer, let's talk about what matters to you so you can communicate to the business, right? We're talking about metrics, we're talking about volume, we're talking about value. Do you have some examples of the things that you would love to be able to report on to demonstrate the hard work security does?
Right. Currently, they look at physical security with voodoo science, and I want to look at the data. And data is everything. If you can't measure what you do with the data, then you really don't know what you're doing. And so I'm looking for the technology in that single pane of glass to tell me that entire story of my risk profile for the company, for our employees, and our assets.
Well, I think that's the great point at the end there, assets, right? Obviously, I'm biased. We built this on ServiceNow, but the data fabric and having all of that data available about locations, people, operations, and assets, like what does that mean to you to be able to touch that as a security leader at any given time instead of being separated from it?
Right, and the audience out there be like, well, you work for ServiceNow, you're pitching their stuff. ServiceNow is great technology. And how about we talk about you before starting Bearing? You were a CSO, you sat in my seat. You built the ServiceNow solution, ITSM, under the CISO's organization, and you've literally solved a problem. And that was more of a duct tape, jerry-rigged, with gum to get this going, but Bearing is really the output of what you designed there.
No, I appreciate it. I think it is important to note that, in a lot of technology companies, you have tech, you go find a problem, then you find somebody that has that problem, then you need to sell it to them. What we're doing is we're taking the problems that we know, that we experience every day, right? Repeated, consistent processes, but then using the out-of-the-box technology from ServiceNow in order to direct it to this problem statement. One of the things that we've talked about specifically is, ServiceNow is not an IT tool, but it was originally designed for IT folks. And as a result, even though most CIOs want to get physical security onto ServiceNow, we have to provide value to the security team. So if you want to mention a couple of things, from an automation perspective, what are the biggest problems that you see every single day where you think workflow automation, and then eventually, and we'll talk about this in a minute, but eventually where AI is going to take us?
Well, think of just calls for service or case management. I come from law enforcement, and back in the day where we had the old CAD RMS under DOS, right? It still worked. You get a call for service and then you react to it. In this industry, you have multiple contractors that come into your ecosystem. None of the technology is integrated or works. So what we're looking for is Bearing to have that one point that we could put in our data and operate. And so case management, investigations, executive protection, risk, event security, and safety. I think I'm leaving a few things out of there. But we're appreciative because we're design partner, customer zero, along with some other big companies that are giving you a requirement to help fix this broken ecosystem.
Well, I think ecosystem is a great term because we're not going to replace everything, right? Ultimately, what we want to do is partner with the biggest people on the edge of that solar system and use ServiceNow's workflow automation as the hub and the spokes of the wheel. right? We want to take a trigger from a video management system and then make a call into the access system. We want to take the event from the critical event management system and spread it across the fabric of ServiceNow so that HR, so that workforce optimization, so that field service management can get the data they need to respond to that incident. Any use cases that pop out of your mind initially where you go, I think you've mentioned event and executive a couple of times. Obviously, that's a big part of your program. We all know your boss.
Right. Let's just talk about the ServiceNow platform. A lot of people don't know what it is or what it does. Think of ServiceNow as a platform as the iPhone for enterprise. And we have all of these apps, we have these solutions, and it brings everything together. And as you said, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, like from access control or video. You just have an API or integration into it and intelligence. And so when you put it all together, it's this seamless experience, and that's what I'm so excited about. Now, to answer your question regarding how we want to use it, for risk and threat management, and that's where I really want to look at how we integrate AI. So we have these bots that our agents are finding these risks and vulnerabilities through data that we already have. Instead of having a human to munch through it and check it, it will automatically have a workflow to identify these risks.
Well, and that's one of the things maybe you could shed some light on, because CSOs out there, I was one of them. I think you and I are both probably a little more tech progressive than some of our peers or former peers, but we're going to have to work with those folks to get them comfortable with AI. Obviously, we can't just automate everything and have an AI agent complete everything. Any thoughts on the best way to break into that and how we work with those CSOs to gain trust and confidence through transparency?
Yeah, I think if you look at where the data sits, it's your data. It sits behind your firewalls. And then what the data fabric of ServiceNow allows you to grab that data automatically to tell you a story. So an example would be if you have an employee that has had some issues and then it might bubble up to a workplace violence situation, it will automatically assign a case investigator to take a look at it based on threat vectors.
No, and you hit an important point, right? And it's pretty funny because you said your firewalls, but ultimately, it's funny, it is your firewalls. And the best part, I think, about being, an ISV, an independent software vendor on ServiceNow for physical security, is that our customer remains the data controller, and ServiceNow is actually the data processor. And what we know is that no startup in the world is ever going to keep up with the security and compliance of ServiceNow's platform and where they're hosted. Obviously, we appreciate your support there because you play a big role in protecting it. But so let's talk about the workplace violence stuff. We were able to demonstrate and win today or this week in the AI Innovation Zone. So we have 2 agentic AI solutions that go out and identify and detect early indicators of workplace violence. One in HRSD and then one in customer service management. And you had mentioned my previous experience, in my time at GoDaddy, B2C corporation, we did have dissatisfied customers at times that would voice that displeasure on the phone, but it often came down to human reporting. And we can educate, we can train, we can remove friction, but at the end of the day, we can't guarantee that the human at the tip of the spear is going to make that report. Any experiences with that in your history?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And right now we're kind of doing manual processes. There's open source intelligence, SaaS companies that you can hire to scan the network and then internally look at your data. But how do you tell a story simply and easily? Now, anyone out there that uses ChatGPT or Grok or any of the AI enabled solutions out there know how easy it is to get information. And so we want to have that experience for us physical security leaders so we can immediately assess these risks and address it in real time.
Well, and I think that's where we can blend workflow automation with agentic AI solutions. And it really comes down to the triggers. So with HRSD, what we've done is we trigger on the things that you and I would look for manually in the past, right? Terminated for cause, not rehirable. And then go and look for, do they have privileged access? Do they have a history? Maybe a performance improvement plan, maybe misconduct, maybe some difficult experiences with their coworkers, and then bring all that together and get it out in front. Now let's talk about the response, because the triggers are great, the reporting is great, but now we've got to automate the response. So, in your experience so far, what you know about Bearing, what you know about the ServiceNow platform, what's exciting you the most on how we can take an input and then automate that response across the ecosystem?
Well, the response to me is critical because somebody has to take action on it, physical action. So my CISO counterparts, everything is digital. It's in the digital realm. We deal with physical threats. So if you have a workflow that's immediate, almost in real time, we can respond effectively. So we have to change how we build our teams. Currently, a lot of guarding companies just have a guard at the front door, really not doing much. You have to have a team that can do a precision response to address any threats, including like an active threat, active shooter.
No, and I think, the thing that I learned, and, maybe a little bit of background for anyone that's listening to this, I used to think that agentic AI was an AI agent. Agentic AI is going to be giving that AI agent agency. So you don't tell it if this, then that. You literally give it a guidebook, and then it figures out what to do based on the inputs and the outputs. And that's the most exciting part, because what I found was it comes down to knowledge articles. And I'm sure you've had this experience where you knew how you wanted things done. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, that thing happens at 3 a.m. And that guard you referenced might be watching Netflix in the SOC instead of actually doing what they're supposed to. So tell me about how exciting it can be to have agentic AI and these agents deployed, always on, never taking a day off, never needing a break, and never watching Netflix at 3 a.m.
Yeah, so it's super exciting. You're always going to have the human element to it. So let me just clear up, it's not here to just get rid of the humans, but it's to augment the humans that are doing stuff. It's to help that guard respond, because it is a boring job if you think about it. And so depending on the technology that pings, right, the workflow for them to execute on something, the AI or agentic AI can help you identify the risks much quicker than a human can. And so that's what really excites me, is the speed to action.
Well, what we're going to be doing is also automating, say, those first 5 steps, right? Because we know, and in my background, I was an Air Force officer. I wasn't a pilot, but I knew a bunch of them. And what they always told me was, checklists are great, but if I don't know the first 5 steps and I don't do them automatically, I don't have time to look at the knee board. I'll be a smoking hole in the ground, right? So with those first 5 steps, we want that AI agent to jump in there because it's consistent, repeatable action. And then to your point, what we can actually do is escalate to the right team. So I think you're getting a higher level of response. Maybe instead of that tier 1 in the GSOC, now you're getting a tier 2 analyst. You're getting a threat assessment manager. You're getting it to the right people at the right time, always on. So if you could go back and talk to yourself, right? Now we're learning so much about how this is going to happen. Obviously, you've been in the industry a while. So look back, what could you have done differently to accelerate this? Anything?
I think it's just like I started off, the industry is slow to move. And part of that is good in a way, because we deal with physical security and risks, and so no one wants to just change things. I just feel that I've been doing this for over 20 years, and that's a long time. And so I think Bearing has solved the problem. We're all in. And I want to ask you, though, a question. Please tell me, what is your grand vision for Bearing?
Ultimately, I think the grand vision, all right, I'll go big here, I'll tell you. I don't like a lot of things about the ecosystem. I think there's problems with, say the integrator channel. I think there's things with the guard companies and manual repeatable processes. I also think that the industry's at an inflection point. We're seeing technology, we're seeing almost a changing of the guard in the folks that are coming into the industry and the expectations. The story I always like to tell is I've got a now 15-year-old. When he was 2, when he got fussy, we used to give him my iPhone, right? And he'd be able to play with it. Well, one day I was still with the government and I'm traveling with him and he got fussy, but I only had my BlackBerry. So I gave him my BlackBerry. And at 2 years old, he hits the screen, holds it up and looks to me and says, broke. Because in his world, there was nothing that was not going to be touchscreen technology, right? You and I grew up with the rotary phone. So we know what it was, we know where it's going. The thing that I see that is most exciting is this next generation of security leaders, as they're entering the industry, their expectations are totally different. I think that we're at this inflection point. One of the problems that I see are a lot of these kind of legacy on-prem, say, access control databases. Well, that was all dependent on an office network. That office network doesn't exist anymore in the hybrid post-COVID workplace. So how do we get these things into the cloud with an API so that we can integrate them with the data fabric so we can actually launch all of these workflows? To answer your question, specifically, I think that Bearing, as the hub and the spokes of the wheel of that ecosystem, can change the entire industry. It can change the way the integrators work. It can change the way the manufacturers work. And I don't know if we'll use this part, but I'll say it anyway. One of the things that we really talk about is the polarity of the data. So right now, in order to get some of these partners, we have to write to the system. I'm going to say in the next 3 years, those systems are going to be writing to ServiceNow, right? And again, think about this one. I connect an ERP to a critical event management system that I then connect to ServiceNow, which is also connected to the ERP. Of those 3 tools, which one has the richest data set about the employee? ServiceNow. So why would we even need to connect to the ERP 2 years from now? Why don't we make ServiceNow the source of truth and actually populate all of those tools directly from there? So that's the thing that I see, right? I see the polarity and the shift and the inflection point across every aspect of the industry. And that's the dare to be great moment, right? That's when I'll know we made it. We seem to be doing pretty good so far, but that's the big change.
And that's amazing. And I am all in. I just want to tell other CSOs or security leaders out there that, the proof is in the pudding, right? I'm super excited about Bearing, but I think we have to show what problems that it solves. How does it make us safer? How does it make us get to the risk and address it as soon as possible? And as far as support, right? You're a startup, right? We want to ensure that if you roll it out, you're scaling effectively. So maybe tell us a little more about that scale model.
Yeah, it's really great. And the ServiceNow ecosystem plays a big role in that. Number one, we're a partner, we're on the store. The amount of support we've gotten from the ServiceNow partner program, architecture, UX design, go-to-market support, just the ability to navigate this ecosystem has been really, really powerful. But then on top of that, there's all of the consultants and integrators that are out there that are doing implementations day in and day out. Those are the folks that are on the front lines on these platforms. They know the data, they know their customers, they know those deployments, and the ability to build those relationships and work within them has really helped us scale. I joke and say I think we're the most resourced startup in the world. Between the ServiceNow partner program, our partners at our venture capital firm, High Alpha, we have gone to market with fractional legal, fractional HR, fractional finance, fractional marketing, plus the ServiceNow partner support, plus actually our development team. Right? Our development team is a niche organization. All they do is build store certified apps. All of those things together has allowed us to accelerate really, really quickly. And as we get through this minimally valuable product, right, which is what we're going to launch next month, or this month, I should say, now we're going to get to the next generation, right? What I'll tell you is even by July of this year, I threw the gauntlet down to the team and we're going to launch 5 AI agents. So this is not an agentic AI solution. This is an AI agent, one that'll do one consistent, repeatable task. But you've been here. So let's say you have a critical event management, something goes bang in the world, all right? But you may have 3 sources of intelligence. Now you're getting 3 emails in Outlook. What we're going to be able to do is bring all of those into ServiceNow, synthesize them with an LLM, create one incident, and then contact your incident management teams natively on Teams directly from ServiceNow. Like that is where we're going. And you just sit there and say, how much time did that take you for every incident? How many of those incidents did you have every year? And how much can we save you as a result?
Yeah, and I think a lot of analysts out there, especially in the Intel world, they get super nervous thinking that this is going to replace them, and it's not. What I look at it as, it's going to allow them to focus on the most important risks so they can take their skills and take the AI synthesized data and then be able to give you a really good actionable intelligence report instead of just munging through all this data. Because that's what you usually see. People just going through data source to data source. And I'm so old, back in the day when I was a detective, I started the criminal intelligence unit. And that was pretty manual process.
So was it note cards?
Pretty close. But now with the agentic AI and that example you gave, you can take like 3, 4, 5 different sources of the same event, synthesize it. And we all use Open AI, ChatGPT, Grok, or whatever you want to use out there that can just take this data in seconds and then just articulate it in a summary. That's all I need. I need that information so I can act on the risk.
No, and I think the key is, and I'll tell you a little bit about our internal culture at Bearing, we will not hire if AI can do the job, right? I encourage every member of our team to use AI in everything they do at work. If they are not doing that, then we're not growing. How do we know how to solve the problems if we're not applying the technology in everything that we do? I don't care if it's creating marketing material. I used it, frankly, to help my son get a job. We used ChatGPT to write a resume for a kid with no work experience, and then we asked ChatGPT to generate 15 questions that a potential interviewer would ask him and helped him prep for the interview. Those are the things that we should be doing every single day in our personal lives, our work lives, and I'm really excited to bring those tools over to physical security.